Thanks for tuning in to the Traumaplicity Podcast with Dr. Amanda Helman, an author, cognitive release coach, consultant, and speaker. Dr. Amanda Helman has guests on the podcast who have overcome different areas of trauma and provided hope for the audience. Thank you for tuning in to this podcast.
Welcome to the Traumaplicity Talk Show. My name is Dr. Amanda Helman, your host, and we have Traumaplicity, trauma being one word, plus the simplicity, which means simplicity in the trauma process. Not saying that trauma is not complex or that it doesn't take a process, but helping our brain to really simplify how we think about it so that we get started. Traumaplicity Talk Show is available on the Amanda Helman Author and Speaker Show, and also podcasts, also YouTube. So glad that you are all here. And please add any of your comments, questions as we go. Typically, we have our show 7 p.m. on Wednesdays. And I'm really delighted today I have Henry Harris, who is author of Facing Our Wounds. And he is on to talk about part of his trauma story. And Henry, I'm just really delighted to have you on, and would love to just know more about your journey and anything else you'd like to share with the audience about how to get in touch with you or other things that you're doing.
Amanda, thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you. I appreciate you, your friendship, and you're such a beautiful person, internally and externally. So I'm so honored to be here with you tonight to talk about my book, Facing Our Wounds. My wounds go all the way back to my childhood, from a variety of things that I go into detail about in my book that has stemmed into my adulthood. And I think for a lot of people, when you don't address those things that you have went through in your childhood, they can affect your adulthood. It's almost like being an adult, but still having to deal with your childhood. So that's everything from like religious trauma. I feel like I went through that quite a bit. Feel like I've been through, just a variety of major things that many people may be familiar with and has went through. And sometimes throughout life, we feel like if I just suppress that, pretend like it didn't happen, I always felt like it would get better, when in reality, it never did.
Yeah, and that's a lot that you brought up about religious trauma, childhood trauma, and different areas, Henry. And I know that you wrote the Facing Our Wounds out of your healing journey. Mm-hmm. Is there something in particular that caused you to write that book?
Yeah. Like I said, a variety of things like being bullied, just a variety of things that you deal with, what people deal with in general. I feel like the essence of the book just helps people to reach a place of transparency and authenticity, and but at the same time being able to deal with you yourself. I told somebody the other day, I said, I didn't just wake up and say, I want to write a book about trauma or about pain. I said, how effective would that be for people who've never experienced it while all wanting to talk about it? I feel like that's not effective at all. I feel like I've been through enough divorce, just a variety of things I've been through in my life that all of us can relate to. Everybody's wounds are different. I'm sure you've been through some things too, Amanda. Your wounds may be different than my wounds, but your wounds may be bigger than mine. Mine may be bigger than yours, but I'll never minimize or downplay your trauma and your wounds just because it's different. The reality of it is, at the end of the day, there's still wounds and they still need to be dealt with. And that's why it's important to face those wounds. As I said on a TV interview here recently, when your wounds finally come up to the surface, I don't know if you've ever been to a lake or an ocean or something, you see the water coming on the surface, it hits your feet, and that feeling comes like, oh, it's finally there. It's about, you see the water approaching your feet. It's the same way with trauma. Like you can hide it
Mhm.
for so long. It's out there in the ocean, but now you see it finally coming up, and you can't just ignore it anymore. You have to face it. You have to deal with the man or the woman that's in the mirror. That's the subtitle of the book, Looking into the Mirror of My Heart. And when you look in the mirror, you don't see a reflection of anyone else, you see a reflection of you, which
Mhm.
means at the end of the day, I have to deal with my own struggles, my own pain. And that's hard to do because to face our wounds simply means in so many ways you have to, it kind of takes you back. We don't want to go back. I didn't want
Mhm.
to, I don't want to deal
Yeah.
with it. I just didn't. And I think that's why this book kind of went viral and it's all over, like different countries are
Mhm.
ordering it. I think almost every state in the United States of different
Mhm.
people all over. Because I think the book has a universal language.
Mhm.
Everybody experienced loss and sadness, and pain and heartache and trauma. We all have experienced it, but to actually face it, I think we need to give ourselves some credit. And so I think that's what's important in facing our wounds.
Thank you, Henry. Yeah, and I think,
Thank
I
you.
asked that because I know you shared about the different traumas, but sometimes there's one thing that leads us to it. Like as you mentioned, it's not like I woke up one day to say, yeah, I'm going to write a book about my trauma. It takes some time after you faced your own wounds. And as you mentioned, it is universal. All of us are human. We all have some type of wounds or some type of sadness or loss, as you mentioned. And so it's relatable for different people. And it's amazing that it's around the United States and around the nations to really help people have a resource and be able to relate, as you mentioned. So thank you for sharing that book. And I'll have you at the end also put that up one more time so the audience can see that. So going into the next part is, what were 3 or 5 or just some simple steps, if you have 3 or 5, great, but some simple steps for our audience to navigate some traumas they're going through?
I like to use that word navigate because that's the main thing about the book. It not only helps people to navigate through their pain, but to reach a destination of wholeness and healing. Some
Mhm.
people some people have just given up altogether.
Mhm.
They've accepted that trauma and that pain as the norm, and that will ever change. But this book kind of opposes that there is change. I'm optimistic that there is change and there is help for anyone. Sometimes there's not always good help out
Mhm.
there. Um, I feel like when it comes to strategies and different things that helps people to get to where they're at, if you read the book, I'm not one of those people that say, this is what works for me, and if you don't do it this way, you won't be healed.
Mhm.
I didn't do that.
Mhm.
So when you ask that question about that, all I can say is I can come from the perspective of what worked for me.
Yep.
Uh, and all I can say is that my faith in God and Jesus Christ is what healed a lot of my internal emotional deep wounds. And I
Mhm.
didn't realize that so many wounds have layers.
Mhm.
My friend William Paul Young, the author of The Shack, we had a conversation when I was writing my book. He said, Henry, also healing comes in layers. I said,
Mhm.
wow, I didn't know that. That is so profound. So to answer your question, I would say for me, my faith in God, helped me out. People did. I would say seeing therapists was a great help. Uh, that was a great help. And also overall, uh, ultimately acknowledging it.
Mhm.
That's the hard part. That's the
Yeah.
hard part. That's
Mhm.
actually where, like the first chapter of my book is called acknowledging my wounds. That's the hardest. That was the hardest part for me because I
Mhm.
spent so many years suppressing it, and like I said, in denial. I think chapter one of the chapters talks about the state of denial.
Mhm.
It's easier to just forget about it, pretend like it didn't happen, but realistically, you know it did. So it's just making you feel more depressed, and it's just such a liberation that comes with just acknowledging it and just
Yeah.
dealing with it. And I feel like healing is a never-ending journey. I don't feel like healing comes to a final destination. Because, and I say that because just when you get over something, or let's say you get healed from something, there is something else that needs to be addressed. Mm-hmm. So I think as long as you're on this earth or this planet, there's going to always be it's progress. Healing is pain is progressive, that it always comes, but also healing is progressive too.
I love that you said that healing. Yeah,
that's kind of what works for me, and I'm very respectful as to what worked for somebody else. But the reality of it is that at least you're getting the help that you need, and you're telling yourself, "I need help." That's a huge start to your healing journey.
Yeah, thank you, Henry. And I love that you said healing is it's an ongoing process. And I always use the visual that healing is like unpeeling an onion. It's one layer by layer, and it is ongoing. So I usually used to say, well, I'm good with that. And now I just say, there may be more. And so there's, as you said, you're going deeper, deep falls deep. And so there's that deeper layer. And I love how you shared your tools, because that's what I love about the show is every week we have a new person on who shares how they went through it. And so if you're in the audience, you may relate to Henry's story or perhaps some of the tools he has, and you pick them up. We pick them up every week to see. And a lot of them are some similar ones, like some people have shared faith, and Henry, you did about your faith. You shared about support of others, which I've heard that's been a huge theme, support of other people who are supportive during the healing process and facing them, which I think is a hard part, even as a human, to really own what happened, even when it wasn't that we deserved it, right? It's always, trauma is hard like that. Sometimes there's things that we respond to out of it, but being able to say, let me face this, which is scary to face the pain and go through it, but so worth it, as you had shared. And also the help of other therapists, that is key. And I've heard that before. And again, there might be different things that other people do, but I think, as you mentioned, this is helpful for people to know that it's possible.
I like how you use the word own. That is very powerful, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. When you own your own story, you can tell it the way you want to tell it. You have the right, so to speak. Not only have I been through this, but I have the right to talk about it. I've owned it. You don't have to worry about being exposed, because you've already exposed yourself. That word ownership is very important too. Like, I own this. This is what I've dealt with, and this is how I'm going to go about being healed.
Yeah, that's great. And especially, I think, with you talking about vulnerability comes when we share our story, there might be shame we have during it, but when we're ready to launch it, not having shame. And I think that's a huge part, is saying, yeah, these are the hardest parts of me. Like, this is me. And this is where I was, but not having shame, knowing that, thank goodness that there's a shift and that it can help other people who were there, and not forgetting that part of the story, because that will help other people know that there's hope from going from one place to another. Great. So thank you, Henry. And I just wanted to see, do you have any other encouraging words to the audience? I know your book is intended for women and men, but it's so great to have. I've been having more men on my show, and a lot of times men don't always seek mental health, just due to different societal barriers. And so do you have any words for the men that may be watching this show in terms of mental health?
I believe men, I'm trying to see how I can word it. I believe men are like in caves, like, so to speak. Women are more open, I believe. And I'm a huge advocate for women and abuse. And we talk about that stuff on my show, the Brother Henry show. But I believe men sometimes are in caves, in the sense like, this is my world. And most men know they have some issues, some internal damage, which can affect relationships too if they don't get that taken care of. I think that's one of many reasons why I've never been abusive in any way, but I think that's one of many reasons why many men have a lot of anger, resentment. A lot of that stuff goes back to our childhood. I'm not saying everything does, but they build this facade, this cave, this like being in our own little bubble. Nobody's getting in it. And it's like, I think we have to reach a point, if this is for men specifically, where you have to allow somebody into your world and not put yourself in a position of bondage like that. Because I know there are a lot of stereotypes. Men don't cry. I guess I'm not a real man because I cry maybe every other day. I could watch a TV show and cry. Men are tough. That's another one. There's just a lot of stereotypes that just need to be broken. And I think it's one of many reasons why a lot of men don't open up about their trauma and pain. It's because of the facade that they've built around themselves, that they're okay, when in reality, you're really not. And it takes a really strong, brilliant, confident man to say, at least to some women, they would like to see or find it attractive that a man can finally admit, not just say he's sorry, but actually admit this is what I'm sorry about, and not using the word if. Many times, if you say, well, I'm sorry if I've done something wrong with you, something wrong to you, when in reality, you know you did. It's kind of manipulating the situation or making her question her sanity. And I speak from experience, because like I said, I'm not being abusive or nothing like that, but at the same time, I haven't always been truthful either. That's facing your wounds. That's confession, which simply means I tell the truth. It may hurt to hear the truth, but at least at the end of the day, you say you told the truth. So I think for a lot of men, allow somebody into that cave with you, or I mentioned my friend William Paul Young, or the shack, or into your shack, into your world. And I think you'll feel a whole lot better about yourself. And I'm speaking from perspective as a man. So it's real hard to get through to men sometimes, but the question is why?
Yeah, that's great. And thank you for sharing that and encouraging men if you're watching, and perhaps even women who are watching, and how, and just looking at saying it's okay. And I think, Henry, to cry is a strength. I think in society we have shared that it's not, to be strong, to not cry. And that's not true. I think for men and women to know it's okay to cry, it's okay to be vulnerable. So thank you for sharing that and encouraging men. And so, just any other final encouraging word you have for everyone out there if they're starting their journey or on the journey of facing their wounds?
I would say, my last words, I would say to give yourself the grace to heal. I believe that healing takes time. So we should give ourselves the grace to heal. Sometimes when people are going through their healing process, they try to rush it, when they need to give themselves the grace to heal. Healing is a day-by-day thing. Like when you go through different wounds and things in your life, or they just use the analogy of like a physical wound. It's not going to heal overnight. I don't know if any doctor that does a surgery on someone and say, you're going to be better by tomorrow. I mean, that's just not realistic. It takes time. I feel like the encouragement I would say in close, give yourself the grace to heal. I think that's what's important. And also, one of the chapters talks about creating a safe place for the wounded. I feel like that's important too. You want to connect with people who you can be 100% transparent with, but also at the same time being careful who you open up to. Make sure they're not only a safe place, but a safe space for you to share anything with without fear of judgment and retaliation.
That's really good. Just making sure you have a safe person. And I think also, when we're in a different journey, I know in my my own personal story, as you shared yours, there were times that I was learning. So a lot of my book was things that I was messing up on or learning, especially even, and so I'm sure you can relate, but being kind to themselves and having people that can relate that you're on a journey, like you said, a safe space. So that's important, whether it's our, whatever our journey is, having people who they may not be able to, some people are not ready for that, but having the ones that are. So thank you for that. So that is our Traumaplicity talk show for this week. Henry, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Audience, if you certainly can pick up his book, you see it in the background, and Henry, if you're willing to share it again, the Facing Your Wounds book, and that's available on Amazon?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so certainly you want to get yourself a copy, and if you have any other questions for Henry, please write it after our show, and I'll certainly get that back to Henry, and we'll connect again. As always, it's great to have all of you on here. It's great to have you, Henry. You all matter. You're worthy, and continue to just take one simple step, one simple celebration at a time to continue your healing journey. And we'll see you back here next week, every Wednesday, 7 p.m. on the Amanda Helman Author and Speaker Show, as well as podcasts and YouTube. So take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
The Traumaplicity Podcast is sponsored by Cognitive Release Coaching TM with Dr. Amanda Helman, who empowers people to release the busy brain and gain back time, energy, and productivity that leads to well-being. Contact Dr. Amanda Helman by checking out one of the links to this show. Subscribe and share the Traumaplicity Podcast with people that can benefit.